Hey guys, this is your girl Paula, the Queen from Queens. These are money minutes that matter. This is a talk show where you and I become accountability buddies. We'll walk hand in hand to eliminate debt, to help you maximize your financial future, and to optimize your health. I'm a nurse anesthetist, so here and there I'll throw in some health tidbits that can help further who you are and where you need to get. This show is primarily sponsored by EAJ1023radio.com. Let's walk through it. Let's get this show started. We have Adria from Waldorf, Maryland on the line. Hi, Adria.
Hello, how are you, Paula?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing fine.
What can I do for you today?
Well, I just have a question. Maybe about a year ago, I was a registered nurse in the Washington, D.C. area, and it became medically sick and could not work for about a year. I used up all of my short-term disability. Of course, I didn't even add on long-term disability, and just getting back into the workforce. So now that I'm at this age and now that I have this medical condition that can happen at any time, I just want to know, what can I do to be more financially satisfied and prepared when something like this happened without me just going through the everyday life of using all my money, and then when it was all gone, then it was a different story.
I got you.
So I guess my question would be, how can I, or what can I do to enhance my financial gain, just for my future, with or without a sickness, just kind of knowing and understanding what my parents came and brought up, that, you work every day, you pay bills and you save, but sometimes saving is just not enough when I'm doing it by myself and still paying for bills and just going through everyday life.
Sure, absolutely. So let's talk about you, Adria. You said that you're a registered nurse?
Yes.
Okay, so am I. I'm a nurse anesthetist. And you had a medical illness. Is it a debilitating illness where you're not in a position to work? Are there long-term effects, or is it an autoimmune?
It was an autoimmune condition that left me paralyzed for a couple of months.
Whoa.
I was able to go back to work. Finally, after a whole year of not working, I was able to go back to work. However, if anything that happens in my life, because it's an autoimmune disease, there's really nothing that they can say that it could never happen again.
Right. And for those who don't know, an autoimmune disorder means that your body is attacking itself. It comes in a host of different forms. You have rheumatoid arthritis, you have Sjogren's, you have Graves' disease. You have a host of disorders where your body's white blood cell, instead of it fighting for you, it's fighting against you. So it typically happens around middle age. Adria, how old are you?
I'm now currently 43, but it happened when I was 42.
Yeah, that's about the age. It happens in your 40s. And you said you were paralyzed for about a year. Ouch. Were you hospitalized the entire time? Were you in rehab?
I was hospitalized for a month and a half with no diagnosis. I went back. I lost my whole life. I had to move in with my sister. I couldn't walk up steps. But they really didn't get anything down pat until I was able to walk with a walker until about maybe 3 to 6 months in.
Well, thank God you have family support. So you're 43, you were hospitalized. Were you also in rehab for a period of time, or did you go home from there?
Oh, no, I went to rehab, but it was only 2 weeks, and unfortunately with this autoimmune disease, rehab really didn't help because it was a muscle weakness type of autoimmune disease. So I was there for rehab for just about a week and a half. But, once they realized that they really couldn't do anything and they hadn't figured it out at that point, they just sent me home.
Well, the interesting thing about autoimmune disorders, and I have rheumatoid arthritis, so I understand what you're going through. It has periods of exacerbations and remission, right? So you may be in remission or controlled by medication. I'm taking something called the biologic, where my body's white blood cell, so it's being suppressed, which means I'm immunocompromised. So it puts me more at risk, probably like you, puts me more at risk where I can contract something else. So how do you get your finances in order? Let me ask you this. Do you have health insurance?
Yes, health insurance through my employee. Excellent. And also my mom, she was selling insurance, some type of, so I had like extra insurance, and she thought that was going to be covered by it, but it wasn't covered. She thought the long-term disability, she's been paying that like $200 every month. And then when I got sick, they basically said if I was not an invalid, then they couldn't help me out at all.
There are so many tricks to the trade, right? Because there are tons of insurances. There's healthcare, there's dental, there's vision, there's disability, liability, there's professional organization insurance. There's a host of insurance, but there's always little clauses and disclaimers that allows you not to be covered. So you also said that you had savings. So do you have any debt, Adria?
Oh, do I have debt?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. And did this occur because of your disorder or prior to your disorder?
I had my outstanding student loan. I did state to you in the beginning, I'm a registered nurse, but that was my second career. Okay. So I have a student loans that's out of the wazoo. Other than that, I just have like my car note, and and that's pretty much it. So my biggest debt now is still my student loans.
So you said that you were out of work for a year, which does that imply you're back at work at full capacity?
I am, yes, I'm at full capacity I'm not at the bedside. I'm not a bedside nurse anymore. I had to take a job that was just kind of just at the computer only. But yes, I started back literally a year to the date when I got sick. I started back full time.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm thankful that your employer recognized who you are professionally, that they're using you in a different capacity under your nursing license. And that's the beauty of nursing, right? The thing about nursing is that we're in a position, if you no longer want to do pediatrics, you can move to OB. You can move to the OR. So without going back to school and getting an additional degree. So I love that about nursing. But also, if you have savings, I would strongly encourage you to reach out to your lenders and tell them that you have a neurological or muscular disorder that's hampering you. They may be willing to change your interest rates for you. As well as
my student loan.
Student loan never goes away. But if it's federal student loan, because of the pandemic, it's been where they're giving us 6 months off until the end of September, so that we no longer have to, we can take no interest and no payments for 6 months.
Right.
And then with the new proposal that's passed through Congress but not through the Senate at this point, they're proposing alleviating some student loan debt for healthcare workers. And also, they're considering giving us a hazard pay, because we've been on the front line during this COVID pandemic, giving us hazard pay. So that may help going towards paying some of your expenses off.
Okay.
But, let me just say to the listening audience, there is insurance for everything. And if you don't read the fine lines, it may not cover you. There are 5 insurances that you definitely need. You need life, you need automobile, you need disability, you need health insurance, and you need home insurance. Everything else is in addition.
Right.
But Adria, I hope that this segment has been helpful for you. And if at any point I can help you, please reach out to me.
I will. Thank you so much, Paula.
Thank you for calling me. You have a wonderful day, okay? We have Nicole from Newark, New Jersey on the line. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Paula.
How are you?
I'm not doing too bad.
Well, why'd you call in today? What's going on?
Well, due to this pandemic, it has really put me and my household in a bind.
Okay.
As far as financial situation. I'm a single mother of 2, have mortgage. I have a daughter that's in college, and I work 2 jobs, so I was kind of financially stable in paying everything on my own and having a stable household for my family. But due to the pandemic, we were furloughed, half furloughed, let's say. Okay. And I'm only now bringing home $300 every 2 weeks around. Okay. Which is not enough to live off of. Also, I have not finished paying this semester's tuition for my daughter, which is due this month. And I've also had to stop making mortgage payments for the last several months. So due to the pandemic, it has really put me in a strain right now as far as my household is concerned, and I don't know if I'll be able to bounce back from this, because who knows how long this will continue to go on.
No, I agree with you 100%. And most importantly, we need to maintain our priorities, right? Food, shelter, clothing, and transportation. So let's talk a little bit about you. You said you have 2 jobs, or you had 2 jobs. So now you're down to 1? Yes.
Now one job is totally shut down, and my current job, my full-time job, I'm only working about 16 hours a week, and my pay was cut. So I'm only making about $300 to $310 every 2 weeks, and it's putting a strain.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
On which bills to pay for.
No, absolutely. And you know what I want you to do is, 1, do you have any debt?
Debt? No. I do have bills, like the mortgage, and which I've stopped, and I do have a college tuition that needs to be paid.
Okay. So I think what you have to do is you need to focus. You need to hone on what your essentials are. College is extremely important, but it's not a priority. So I would call the university. And I would say to them, first of all, universities now are losing tons of money, and they recognize this is a pandemic. This is global. So I would say, I need a payment plan for my tuition for last semester, as well as ongoing payment plan. I would also, since your mortgage appears to be on furlough, or forbearance, you can tell your mortgage company after 3 months, I need to continue this forbearance. This is real-time stuff, and it's not just you. No one's going to have their house taken from them or be foreclosed upon during this pandemic. But you need to be in a position where you have control. $300 every 2 weeks isn't a lot of money when life continues to go on.
Absolutely.
But there are a lot of things that you can do. And what I'm encouraging people to do is now to step out on faith, to try something different. Can you think of maybe a type of skill set that you have that you could become maybe an entrepreneur? And then also, remember in 2008, 2009, a lot of really profitable multi-billion-dollar businesses came out of that. You have Venmo, Groupon, you have Uber, you have Pinterest, you have Instagram. All of those came after 2008. So who's to say, if you start planning and preparing now, that you can't be the next billionaire in the next 10 years? It's possible.
Well, the only thing about that is, Paula, that now that some of the state has lifted some of their restrictions, that my full-time job is getting ready to open again.
Okay.
Which means that I will get more hours, or somewhat back to a normal schedule. I'm not sure how it will pan out. So it's just the several months that I've been down that it's going to be hard to bounce back from. Because if all goes well and we do open and go back to our regular hours and our regular, pay schedule, I'll be able to move forward slowly. But it's the past months that may hinder me down the line.
And I fully understand that. So what ultimately happens, financial institutions recognize that. If I couldn't pay you for 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, when I start back to work, I don't have 6 months of savings put down so that I can give it to you. So they're going to restructure your mortgage, right? They may say we can do payment plans and have you add a couple of $100 in addition each month. They can tack it on to the end of your mortgage. So instead of having a 30-year, you may have 30-year plus 3 months or plus 6 months. Also, they can also say to you, in addition to doing the installment payments or tacking it onto the end, they may also say to you that you can incrementally work something out differently where we can give you a whole new mortgage. There are options out there. So don't let these options piss you off and put you in a state where you're not thinking. But I encourage you to think outside the box and see what can happen for you in the event Corona goes longer than 3 to 6 months, okay?
Okay, thank you so much, Paula.
Well, thank you for calling me, Nicole, and take good care of yourself and your family. We have Omar from Baltimore, Maryland on the line. Hi, Omar.
Hi, Paula. How you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm fantastic.
Yeah, what can I do for you today?
Well, I was calling to get some financial answers on how I can save some money. I'm a black male, just getting out of prison. I'm close to 48 years old, and I'm just trying to figure it all out now. I'm a chef now. I made my way from being in the street to becoming a chef, and this is my turn in life to have something better.
Well,
I'm looking
Omar,
to buy a house, and at the time I'm looking to buy a house, I need to save some money.
you know what? I commend you, and I wish the best for you. That you spent some time in prison, and now you're trying to look to have a new start as being a chef. You said.
Yes.
Oh, I'm so happy for you. So let's talk about you. How long were you in prison?
9 years.
You were in prison for 9 years. So what's your background? Did you finish high school? Were you in college? What were you? I don't want to know what you were doing per se, but where are you at academically, and what are you trying to achieve?
Well, I have a GED. I have a 3-year apprenticeship in cooking. I also have a culinary degree and a serve safe degree. So high school, I just have a GED and just continue to move forward.
But that's awesome, right? Because it's not where you start, it's a matter of where you end up. So,
Exactly.
yeah, some of us weren't born with a silver spoon. So, do you have any debt, Omar?
No.
You have no debt. Excellent. Now tell me, what is your work experience now that you're a chef? What kind of chefing do you do?
Well, I was cooking in fine dining for McCormick and Smith, also at Oceanair Seafood, and right now, some friends of mine, we just opened up a restaurant.
Okay.
Today is our opening weekend.
Well, congratulations. That's amazing. Tell me, what's on the menu? What's on your menu?
Oh, we have turkey wings, baked chicken, fried chicken, catfish, macaroni and cheese, collard greens, string beans, potato salad, coleslaw, yellow rice, cabbage, bread, Kool-Aid, iced tea. We started off with a nice menu that's going to continue to get, larger as we move on.
Well, I gotta tell you, Omar, it sounds to me that you have a vision for your future. It sounds to me like you're making plans. I mean, you're starting opening weekend and you decided to call into my show. So thank you for taking the time out to be a part of this. But
you're welcome.
Yeah, well, about a year and a half ago, I did a class called Diversity in Education. And the book that we used was called Beyond Silent Voices, Class, Race, and Gender in the United States. And what this book talked about and what it told me was that we all know that it's inequitable. We all know that there's structures designed that will not necessarily move everyone forward. And the big take home for me was social reproduction. Now, social reproduction is where there's structures in place, whether it be academic institutions or economic environments and social class structures that keeps you where you are. Meaning, if you're in a situation where your father's a lawyer, your doctor's a lawyer, then these children are educated so they can reproduce the same type of behaviors. But on the adverse side, if the parents are not high school educated, if the parents are laborers, if the parents are in and out of prison, or if there's a wealth of teenage pregnancies, then the next generation is almost ingrained in them to do the same. And when I read this book, it made me freeze to recognize that we're not all encouraged to move up the social economic ladder. So some of these things that I found out is they have what's called financial capital, cultural capital, human capital, service capital. All of these areas are structured so certain class groups can't move above and beyond. And I'm not here to talk about, the high school to prison penal system. I'm not here to talk about how children are not encouraged to move beyond what's status quo, the norm. I'm not here to talk about all those ills within our society, but they do exist. And Omar, I gotta tell you, it seems like you're an example of what happened back then doesn't have to be what happens in your present. Is that so?
Yes.
Yeah. So your goal is to save for a house, and are we saving now, or because this is your opening weekend that you're planning for these things in the very beginning?
Yes, I'm planning for them in the near future. Being that the money that I did have, we put it back into the restaurant, so this is our start.
I think this is amazing. Well, let me say this to you. In the beginning of the year, I did a 2020 challenge, and I asked people to start preparing. One, I said, create an oops fund, which is about $1,000. So if anything comes up, instead of using a credit card, you have this cash to use. You use it, you put it back. The second fund was called a giving fund. And what I always say to people, although it's hard and it's challenging, people would love to be in your shoes where they're starting a restaurant after spending 9 years in prison. They're starting all over again. They're getting a new start. People would love to be there. So I believe that we're a blessing to be a blessing to other people. And then the last fund is an investment into your financial future. So let's see if you can do that. Start off doing that. You can have a house savings, an oops savings, and then a financial future savings. Because in the event you want to start your own or move beyond just one restaurant and create another, you got to start preparing for that now.
Right.
Okay?
Okay, that sounds good.
And let me ask you to do something else. Can you create what's called a vision board?
Yes.
Now, a vision board, I did a vision board about 5 years ago, and everything on my vision board has come to its existence. All of that's happened because I envisioned that. So why don't you make a vision board and send me a copy, okay?
Okay, absolutely.
Well, Omar, God bless you, and I wish the best for you, okay? For those of you watching me on YouTube, as well as those of you listening to me on EAJ1023radio.com, this is my attire when I'm on the front lines fighting the pandemic. COVID-19 is vicious, and our community is disproportionately being represented as victims of COVID. Why? Why are so many health crises affecting our community? First of all, I'd like to give my condolences to the Floyd family. I know it sounds like a wash, but I send my condolences. My family sends their condolences. As it turns out, my cousin Bridget Floyd is George Floyd's sister. So from the Shipman Roberts to the Ship Floyd family, God bless you. How do we grieve? The nation is grieving as we witness that terrible occurrence. The world is grieving. There are several stages of grief, but it starts with anger. Dr. King said, a riot is the language of a people that's not heard. So you've seen riots, you've seen protests. I am totally against those who were out there looting and creating a distraction. That's not what we represent. But anger goes from anger and frustration to bargaining, and eventually it gets to acceptance. What does that mean? It doesn't mean we don't forget, we forget. It doesn't mean that we don't care about what happened. It means that we're choosing to carry on with our lives and hopefully have a better tomorrow. When I was on the protest line, this is my sign. My sign said, Black Lives Matter. Obviously, my sons are Black men. My husband's a black man. My father fought in World War II. My father was a black man. My brothers, my nephews, my cousins, my friends, they're black men. Black lives matter. Education matter. As I said with the previous caller, why is it that we are taught that our oppressors should be seen in a good light in our history books? Why are we misled to believe that the slaves were not our forefathers? I was taught to believe that they were the slaves, not that they were my forefathers or that I came from that generation of people who were captured and brought here from Africa. In our education system, you have several inner city schools in the United States where the 4-year graduation rate for people of color is less than 60%. Equally, you have a graduation rate of white Americans from 75 to 95% within 4 years. Why aren't the resources allocated appropriately? If there's a greater need, they should have greater resources. But we are taught social reproduction. We're taught to stay and live within our communities and to accept the intimidation, the violence, the health scares, the drugs, all of the gunshots and all of the people being slain in our community. We're taught to accept that. Education is supposed to be the great equalizer. Why is it that with higher education that we're not allowed to walk into the doors? Even if the child is qualified and they get a substantial scholarship, but 50% scholarship of a $60,000 a year tuition is still $30,000. Times 4 years, more probably 5 years, that's $120,000 to $150,000 of debt. Taking out Parent Plus loans is not based upon your income. So you can make $30,000 a year annually and still have $200,000 of student loan debt for your child. Why is that allowed? Open the doors to education so that we can make a difference. Economics matter. That's why I sit in this chair. I am a financial coach. I give free advice because I want to help people move from the disease of debt, which is also disproportionately affecting people of color. There's no equity in our pay. There's no equity in our availability. We're taught in a lot of our schools to receive orders, not to give orders. We're not taught to go in the advanced classes so that we are in a position where we're white collar workers and not always on the front line. This is where we make a change. Economics matter because when you don't have debt, you can control your community. When you have stores where black hair care and black skin care is sold, and it's a $7.5 billion industry each year, but it's not for us. It's our dollars, but it leaves our communities. We have to stop and say no more. I was in Baltimore, Maryland last week with my daughter. I'm going to pick up some hair care supplies. And on the door of the store, it says, so-and-so children from so-and-so school will not be allowed in this store. And that was not a new sign. So why are you allowed to be in my community if you don't like the people that you serve? I say we should take control of that. Buy more black owned. Go out of your way. Spend a little extra money. Buy black owned products. Support people of color in their businesses. Let's make a change in our economic situations. So how do we make a change? Well, I wrote a letter to the governor of Maryland, and I said, "Dear lawmakers, I am distressed. My community is distressed. We as African Americans in the United States of America are bleeding out and we can't breathe. Each and every one of us are witnessing the pain, the heartache, the distrust, and the distress as our men and women are being murdered on the streets violently. Whether this is on or off camera, there is no one there to protect us. Those enforcers that rule as a gang, bound by their own rules of death and intimidation. In all these cases where African Americans were slayed by the police were wrapped in a cloak of protection." Then I go on to say, I'm not sure how the person that represents us to the world was put in an office of the highest esteem and dignity in the United States, where he displays open hostility. Whether he was there rightfully or he's there underhandedly, he's now there while the world continues to watch. Voting makes a change. Vote for the president, the governor, the prosecutors, the judges, the DAs. Vote for who represents us and our communities. If we don't like their policies, let's get them out of there. Sit at the tables. When they're discussing racism and prejudice, sit at the table, have your voice heard, so that we're making decisions for us and not someone else. Text the word Floyd to 55156. That's Floyd to 55156, and it'll give you an email on how to make a change. I want to say, when I was protesting, I'm thankful that a lot of the protesters were majority white young Americans. United we stand. They were protesting all over the globes. Whites, people of color, blacks, Asians. We are tired of the injustice being inflicted upon humanity. I have faith that this would change. My father experienced Jim Crow. He experienced sharecropping. He experienced segregation. I say the buck starts with us. This was a fantastic show. COVID is real. Just because the states are now back open, it doesn't mean things are going to go back to normal. Restaurants are not at full capacity. People who work in hair and beauty salons, guess what? They're not making the money that they used to make. People who were the customers don't have the money that they used to have. COVID is real. You go from an income of several $1,000s every 2 weeks to now you're making just a few $100s. It's going to impact us for a long time, guys. We have to always remember priorities, priorities. Food, shelter, clothing, and who really needs clothes right now, and transportation. We also talked to an amazing caller who's now moving from being in the prisons to doing pastries. It's not a matter of where you start, it's where you end up. All things are possible. It's a walk of faith. We were not given a spirit of fear. And when you are afraid, do it in fear, but do it anyway. Why can't we be the next entrepreneurs? Uber, that was established after 2010, is now worth billions of dollars. Pinterest, who just takes our ideas and put it on a different platform, they're worth billions of dollars. We have opportunities, guys, that we can continue to walk by faith, do things differently, not be conformed to the social norms, and prepare for ourselves and our children's futures. I love you and have an amazing day. Continue listening to EAJ1023radio.com.
Roberts Targets Financial is not a certified professional service of finances, brokers, accountants, taxes, insurance, or legal. We research the advice that is given to provide the most accurate, up-to-date information. This information is designed to work in conjunction with your information. All information is suggestions. We recommend that you consult with a trusted licensed professional for your specific decisions. All information is for general purposes. We are not liable for any losses or gains. We accept no responsibility for any decisions made after participating on or from listening to the show or from Roberts Targets Financials. If you like this episode, hit the subscribe button.